Welcome back everyone to another video. Today we shall create ourselves a health, thirst and hunger system. This is slightly off topic for our series, but we do need some variables that we can restore once we use our consumable items, which got requested quite a while ago already. So we are going to create the system. As you can see, the values are slowly dropping over time. Also, if our thirst or hunger parameters go below 0, our health is also going to reduce. So first, let's begin with the fact that I've added some new pickup items to my items database. And so I have the water bottle, I have a banana and a medical box. What is important in my case is these types. So I've given for the water, I've given type thirst, for the banana it's hunger, and for the health box it's health. And we are going to use these types to detect which of our variables we want to restore. So let's go to our third-person character, and now let's create some variables first. So we're gonna need quite a few, so let's give this one a name health, and this will need to be a float value in my case, and I'm gonna make sure that this is a replicated variable. Then I'm gonna duplicate this, and I'm gonna call this is gonna be the max health. So max health. Then we're gonna need the thirst, and then we need the max thirst. Then we will have a hunger and a max hunger. All of these needs to be replicated. And now let's create a function which will allow us to add these values. So let's add a new function, and let's call this add stats. Now we need a couple of inputs. The first one is going to be the type, which I'm going to use a string for that, since my types are strings. And then I will also use the value, and that's going to be a float, and the amount that we need to add to our stats. Now from the type, I will do a switch on string, and I'm going to have quite a few values in here. So in my case, it's going to be 6 values. So the first value is going to be the health. Then we are going to have a max health. We're going to have the thirst, max thirst, a hunger, and a max hunger. Now from all of these, we will want to set our variables. So let's set our health, let's set our max health, and let's do the same thing for all of our float variables that we just created. Now that we have done this, what we want to do is we want to get all of our variables. So let's get our health, and let's do a health plus float plus this value that we have from the input, and then we connect it to our set variable. And we do exactly the same thing for all of these. So max health plus the value is the new max health as of right now. Now, just for the safety purposes, in case if we restore our health and it goes above the max health, then what we want to do is check if this health variable is bigger than our max health value. So make sure you use the current one that we have right now instead of the set node. Then from that one we can check if it's true, and if that is true, then probably we want to set our health to be equal to our max health so that it wouldn't go above the max value. And we want to do exactly the same thing for all of our stats. So the same thing goes for the thirst, and the same thing goes for the hunger. I'm just gonna copy the same values, but simply reconnect these values right here. So max hunger, max thirst, current thirst, and then for these ones, so here we want to set our thirst and we want to set our hunger and check for the max thirst and the max hunger. So that's basically going to be it for this function as of right now. Of course, you can do this more complex, but now in the event graph, what I will do is create a custom event, and I'm going to call this server add stats, since we want our server to change these values so that all of the clients would be notified about what's going on with whose player statistics once we, for example, damage the other character or whatnot. So now let's make sure that this event is ran on server, and then we can run our add stats. So on every time when we want to change any of these variables, we shall do it through our server add stats function. The function's name is add stats, but if we provide a negative value, it's going to remove the amount. So this function works both ways. So we are all good in here. What we want to do next is probably display our values. So I'm going to go to the UI HUD, and inside of here I'm going to do this very simple. I'm just simply going to add a couple of progress bars to my widgets. So I'm going to move the money down, and I'm going to add a couple of progress bars. So I'm going to show how I will make one, and then off screen I will do the rest. So I have this thing right here. Just for the preview, I make it halfway to change the coloring. So, and now if we scroll down, here is the fill color and opacity, and since this is the health, what I want to do is simply make it red. So red, there we go. And what I also want to do is make sure to give this a name. So let's perhaps call this health bar. Then I want to do a binding for the percentage. So let's create a binding for the percentage. And here what we want to do is simply cast to the character. So let's get our owning player pawn. And then from this guy, let's get our current health. And let's get our max health. Then we want to divide these two values with one another. To get a value between 0 and 1, since that is what the progress bar requires from us to have. And then once we have done this, if we would go to our third person character, say max health, let's give this perhaps 100, and the health, let's give this 40. That means that now if we would press play, you can see we have some health over here. So I'm just gonna simply do the same thing for all of these, give this 40 and 100, and create also the progress bars for all of the other stats. So I have mine set up. So I have the hunger, thirst, and health, and I've colored those. So this is health, thirst of course, and the hunger is going to be green in my case. I have the same names, but that doesn't really matter as long as you have the correct bindings. So let me change those real quick. So the thirst bar and of course the hunger bar. Now let's create some functionality which actually reduces these values, because just like any person in this planet, everybody wants to eat and we get hungry over time. So I will add a new function and I will call this reduce stats. So over here I will do a sequence. And on both of the execution routes, we are going to run our, not our regular add stats, we're going to run our server add stats function over here. So it's going to get the execution. And so for the types, the top one for me is going to be the thirst, and the value is going to be -1 since we want to reduce the amount. And for the second one, it's going to be our hunger, and the value is going to be -0.5. Then after we are done with this, we want to get our thirst, and we want to check if this is bigger than 0. So let's do a if branch check on that one. And we also want to do the same thing for our hunger. So let's make sure we do. Let's change this to the hunger. Then if this is false, if the amounts are not bigger than zeros, then we again want to run our server add stats, and in this case we want to remove our health. So for the type, I'm going to use the health, and the value in my case is going to be -2. Then once we are done with this, again we want to do another if branch check, and here we want to check our health. So let's drag in the health, and let's check if this is bigger than 0, and if it is not, then probably you want to run your death animation and make sure that your character has died. I don't have that system yet, so I'm just going to simply print out a string which is going to say I died. So that's going to be it for this function. Now let's go to our event graph. Let's look for our on begin play event, and at the very end of it we can simply, we need a timer function. So set timer by function name, and our function name is our reduce stats. Reduce stats, and we want to make sure that this is a looping event so that it gets looped all the time, and also fill in the time value. So how often do you want to run this function? For me, as of right now, I will do 2 seconds. So now with this being set up, let's give it a try. Let's press play and let's see what happens. As you can see, the values are dropping slowly, so let's wait for it to drop completely to see if this actually functions as we want it to. And as you can see, once we got thirsty, our health started to drop. So that's going to be it for today's video, and tomorrow we shall actually work on consuming our items. First is going to be, of course, from our hotbar. Also, I want to make sure that we can equip items from our hotbar as well. And another functionality which I want to include is that once we drag and drop our item on top of our character right here, so that he would also consume these consumable items. So thank you guys for watching. Subscribe, leave a like, comment, join my Discord, support me on Patreon, visit my website, and I see you in the next video.